I'm Margie Meacham, and what I do is I help people apply neuroscience to enhance learning and performance in their daily lives. So what that means is I translate a lot of really complex and sometimes conflicting information that's coming out of the science right now and figuring out what can we use today, what can actually help us understand the way we behave, the way our brain works, the way we learn, the way we face challenges and do new things. So here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about your brain and how amazing and wonderful it is. I want to talk about several specific things you can do to harness the power of that brain. So think about it. You have 100 billion neurons just inside your head. That's more stars than there are in the Milky Way. It's by far the most complex thing we know of, and we're only beginning to understand a tiny bit of it. In fact, an awful lot of what we think is true will probably turn out not to be true as we continue to study. But here's a few things we're pretty sure of. One is plasticity. It's constantly changing. So your brain is made up of neurons, cells that have a body, and they have these tendrils going out from them, dendrites, and they almost touch other nerve cells, but not quite. And that little gap is called a synapse. And what happens when you have any kind of thought, conscious or unconscious, is a spark of energy, neurochemical energy, jumps across that gap from one cell to another, to another, to another. And this looks like light going on in your brain. So you have this wonderful light show going on, and that's why you can feel this flash of, I get it now, insight, ideas. And what that does for you is that gives you the opportunity to change, because these aren't permanent connections. They keep rewiring depending on what's happening in your life, what kind of stimulus you're getting, what kind of ideas you have, and what kind of conscious direction you give your brain. So if you choose to grow those connections in a certain way, your brain will do that. Now, what does that mean? That means it doesn't matter what your experience has been, how you were raised, what kind of suffering or deprivation or hard luck or bad breaks you've had. Those have certainly shaped who you've been, but they don't have to be a part of who you are and who you are becoming. That is the wonder of neuroplasticity. Another thing I want to talk to you about is survival, because your brain was evolved over the millions of years the human race has been alive. It has evolved to keep you alive. That's why it does some of the crazy things it does, because in today's world, we might respond to things that seem like threats in a way that's not real productive. And we do that because the brain is still back in the caveman era, and your brain thinks that that's a life and death situation. So understanding that and helping your brain put some things in perspective can change the way you deal with the world. The other thing I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about the learning and forgetting curves and how we can learn new things through triggers, repetition, and conscious choices that open up a world of possibilities. So once you begin to harness the power of your brain, almost anything is possible. When you think about what the women who are the focus of this particular TEDx, the women who have achieved against terrible odds, the women who are facing terrible, terrible odds every day, and yet they find beauty, they find wonder, they find hope, they find change, they find growth. That's the power of your brain. That is what I want to talk about. Because when you choose to harness that power, when you really choose it and you know what you're doing, everything changes. Thanks.